The military education is different than academic education. We're taught to make mistakes. So every day I'd fly and we had to kill the engine on our aircraft and crash.
It's called auto rotation. I used to fly R-22s, and it's the scariest thing you've ever done.
But every aircraft we do, I was cross-trained in all the aircraft. We always practice crashing. Because one day, as you know, you will crash.
And you did crash.
And I did crash 3 times. But if I didn't practice that, I'd be dead. So what happens to the average person in a financial crash, they don't know what to do. And right now, as you know, for the middle class of the world, we're in a crash. The purchasing power of the yen, the euro, the rupiah, all going down. And people are working harder and harder and harder, and the central banks of the world are printing more money. Interest rates, Trump just told the Fed, don't you raise those interest rates. Well, that screws all the savers.
Right.
I was on CNN calling the crash of 2008. I said, Lehman's going down. You can check it out. I said to Wolf Blitzer, Lehman's going down. And he goes, oh. And he got kind of flustered because they're not allowed to say stuff like that.
Right.
And we had Jean Chatzky, who represents Wall Street, the mutual funds and 401k guys. She goes, oh. They don't want what we know out there. So that's why fake is fake money, fake teachers, fake assets.
How can you explain that to people? And then what do they need to know about fake assets to protect themselves, especially from this upcoming crash or crisis that's going to happen?
Can I give you a very simple?
Please.
Okay. This here is a balloon. So in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So what did that mean? That meant the U.S. government, the U.S. Treasury, could now print money. So the U.S. Treasury would sell a bond to the Fed. Over here would be the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, ECB, and all this. The financial industry is 2 things, debt and taxes. Debt and taxes. And that's where fake starts. 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and the U.S. dollar became debt. And we still tell kids to go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and get out of debt, and invest in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. That's not it. Now, who tells them to do that? That's the most ridiculous thing there is.
The book starts and it says, lie number 1, saving money will make you rich.
Yeah, it never will. You know that. Because they can print it. Why would you save it and why would you work for it if they can print it faster than you can work for it? And number 2 is they keep dropping the interest rates on it. And today in the world, America especially, is this gap between the rich and everybody else. And I know the game of the rich. My rich dad taught me, you know it because you're the banker. The game the bankers and the rich play is different than what they teach you in school. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Rich Dad's lesson number 1, the rich don't work for money. Don't you touch that stuff. The people that are being screwed today are the poor and middle class because they work for money. The banker friends, they're not working for money.
They have money working for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Very big difference in mentality here. So we have, in America today, we have, even Ray Dalio of Bridgewater, one of the biggest hedge fund guys in America. He's saying this gap between the rich and everybody else is too wide. Well, you could have seen that back in 1972. Because the moment you corrupt money, the very thing that everybody works for, saves, counts on, they were screwed anyway. And our school systems, fake money, fake teachers, fake assets, part of that same system. Government, education, Wall Street, or City of London. And in Paris today, they have the yellow jackets.
Yeah, the protesters.
What's going on in America today are red for ed. All these school teachers are putting on red t-shirts because they know they're being screwed. They're protesting and all this. Their pension plans have been sucked dry by Wall Street. And what do? They put hedge fund managers in to manage the pensions. You gotta be kidding me. You put a hedge fund guy in to manage the biggest pot of money called the school teachers, firefighters, and police officers' pensions? They just sucked all the cash out of it. And the teachers are going, What happened to us? But because they don't know anything, it's red for Ed. They're out there protesting in mass all over the United States. But you don't hear about it. They talk about the yellow jackets. They don't talk about red for Ed. So this whole thing is coming apart right now. And it goes back to the question I have always asked, why doesn't our school teach us about money? Because Wall Street won't let them.
That's simple.
That's simple.
And so if someone's listening to us that's stuck in that poor middle class trap and they hear it's their fear that ultimately is keeping them from that, that's a hard thing to hear, Robert.
Well, every time I do a lot of speaking to the masses out there, Lehman doesn't invite me in because we're gone, but it's so risky. What you're saying is risky. And I said, what I do isn't risky for me, but it's risky for you. And when somebody says, what is risk? You have to look in the mirror. Do you know what I mean? For me to fly in Vietnam, that was high risk. But the higher the risk, the more you have to study. You know that, I know that. So if you're not going to study, you're not going to practice and all that, then you should do what Wall Street tells you to do. Buy, 401ks, mutual funds, ETFs and all that. But that's where they're fake assets, because they only make Wall Street or the city of London rich. Just watch where the cash is flowing. Follow the money.
Yeah.
It's not making the poor middle class rich. All Wall Street in America has done is rip off the pensions, because pensions are the biggest pool of money in America. And states like Kentucky, New Jersey, Illinois, California, Hawaii are going bankrupt because Wall Street went in and just sucked all the cash out of their pensions. So the school teachers like my dad, the firefighters and police officers, they have no retirement now. And so that's why it's fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. They're the same system. You see, in 71, that's where fake starts. My rich dad sent me a letter. I was stationed on an aircraft carrier off Vietnam. And it says, hey, did you know that Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard? And we didn't know. We're not in the banking industry. And he says, watch out, the world's going to change. So by the time I got the letter, it was 72. My co-pilot and I said, well, what does gold and gold standard mean? But we didn't know. Was illegal for Americans to own gold in 72. Imagine that.
Wow.
That's how powerful gold was. And the more I researched it, the more I found out. So my co-pilot and I, where the book starts, fake starts, we fly behind enemy lines to go look for gold. We went to look for gold, and we're standing in front of this little Vietnamese woman who's the broker for the gold company, and she's selling this little cubes, nuggets of gold. And then, gold was 35 an ounce. It was now pushing 50 an ounce. So I figured, well, she's behind enemy lines, we're behind enemy lines, I can negotiate a deal. And she's a little tiny woman, little red teeth, because they chew beetle nuts all day long. And I go, I'll give you about $40. And she goes, ha ha ha. So she's laughing about it. We're behind enemy lines, I got US dollars. She goes, ha ha ha. And then I realized she knew more about money than I did.